Now, it's rather common in WWE that the first finisher used by a particular wrestler isn't the finisher they keep throughout their career. They can often change their finisher until they can find a move that fits their character perfectly. Also, a wrestler may introduce a new and completely fresh finisher in the middle of their career, and they often do this to mix things up and keep things exciting when it comes to their presentation and moveset. However, after a while, this new finisher can often just be forgotten about by the wrestler, and they could just revert back to using the finisher that fans love so much. But which finishers were they? Well, join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 finishers that WWE wrestlers retired. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Number 10. Dean Ambrose, the original Dirty Deeds. When the Shield debuted in WWE in 2012 at the Survivor Series pay-per-view, one of the first things fans noticed was that all three had extremely different wrestling styles. Rollins was more of a high flyer, Reigns was a powerhouse, and Dean Ambrose was a more masterful brawler. These different wrestling styles also extended to their finishes, and whilst Rollins and Reigns kept their finishes, those being the curb stomp and the spear for the majority of their careers, Ambrose would change his finisher after around a year on the main roster. Originally, he would use a headlock driver as his finisher, and the interesting thing about this move is that it was still called the Dirty Deeds. The move was rather underwhelming, especially in comparison to the curb stomp and the spear. Although, is the spear really exciting anymore? But anyway, although the move was indeed kind of lackluster, it did win Ambrose his first singles title in the WWE when he would use the move to win the US title from Kofi Kingston at 2013's Extreme Rules pay-per-view. Eventually, Ambrose would change the move and would start using a double arm DDT, which is still the move he uses as his finisher to this very day in AEW and New Japan. Number 9. Shawn Michaels, Teardrop Suplex. Believe it or not, at one stage of his career, Shawn Michaels used to use Sweet Chin Music as a standard traditional move. His actual finisher would be that of a Teardrop Suplex, a move that is very similar to Kurt Angle's Angle Slam. The move was rather underwhelming for HBK, especially as a finisher, but it wasn't until HBK was informed by Pat Patterson that the Sweet Chin Music would be a much better fit for him as a finisher, and of course the move took off. Speaking to Sam Roberts, HBK would reveal,
"When I first went singles, I was trying to use what I later heard was called a teardrop suplex. I just was the double underhook, like a crotch to guy and suplex him. So I was using that one, and then Pat Patterson came to me one day and he said, I like it. He said, but he said that kick. He said the kick is actually more impactful than the suplex. What do you think about using that one?" And I was still new as a single, so sure, heck, I'm just trying anything. And so it did that, and then it just sort of kept going, and then, whatever. Then you start adding some more flair to it, and then all of a sudden, and eventually you do it long enough, one day it begins to take on this life of its own.
Number 8. Chris Jericho, The Breakdown. In 2001, Chris Jericho believed that he needed a more new, impactful finisher. He had the Walls of Jericho and the Lion Salt, but he wanted something fresh and unique. Therefore, he came up with a new move called the Breakdown. Now, the Breakdown was basically a full Nelson facebuster, just like the Miz's skull-crushing finale, something he wasn't too happy with the Miz using. Now, one of the issues with the move, and one of the reasons why the move was retired so quickly, was that it was completely lifeless in comparison to Jericho's two other finishing moves. Now, notably, the move was responsible for winning Jericho his first ever world title when he pinned The Rock in the Acclaim match at 2001's No Mercy pay-per-view. However, soon after Jericho's big win, the finisher would be retired completely, and Jericho would revert back to his two other finishing moves, which was a decision welcomed by a lot of Jericho fans. Number 7. The Rock, Running Shoulder Breaker. Before The Rock became one of the most popular and successful WWE wrestlers of all time, he was struggling to connect with the audience in WWE. His initial character was bland and lifeless, and the fans completely rejected him. It wasn't until his transition into a heel in '97 that the real Rock finally surfaced. Prior to the introduction of the Rock Bottom and the People's Elbow, The Rock was using a basic running shoulder breaker as his finishing move. The finisher would be underwhelming for any wrestler, never mind somebody like The Rock. Luckily, 7 months after his debut, he would debut the Rock Bottom, a move that nobody in WWE was doing at the time. The People's Elbow would quickly follow.
The People's Elbow!
The Rock would soon become a WWE megastar. Number 6. Braun Strowman Triangle Choke. Former Universal Champion Braun Strowman would make his debut in the summer of 2015 as part of the Wyatt family. He was extremely green, and his matches and moveset were designed to protect him, and WWE did a decent job in not exposing Braun for the rookie that he was. The Monster Among Men's initial finisher would be that of a lifting arm triangle choke, a devastating looking move that truly added to Braun's presence and aura. To get the move over, Braun would use his finisher to win his first ever pay-per-view match when he would team with the Wyatt family to defeat the trio of Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns and Chris Jericho. Braun would get the win for his first team when he would choke out Jericho using his newly debuted finisher. Soon after Braun's debut, the choke was quickly dropped from his arsenal, and in place came a basic running power slam, a move that fans have been eager to see to be replaced ever since. Come on, they can surely come up with something more creative than that. Number 5. Randy Orton Ozone. It's fair to say that the RKO is without a doubt one of the most popular finishing moves in WWE history.
Here comes Ziggler, went for the famous serve. Randy Orton countered.
However, Randy Orton hasn't always used the famous move as his finisher, as at one stage of his career, he was struggling to find his groove, and his finishing move was a great indication of the struggle. When Orton debuted on SmackDown in 2002, he would use a finishing move known as the Ozone. Now, this move would later be used by MVP, but he would rebrand the move as the Playmaker when he debuted in 2006. The move itself is rather anticlimactic, and it's not appropriate for a big star like Orton. But fast forward to 2003, and Orton had been handpicked to be a member of the Evolution stable on Raw. He would then debut a new finisher in one of his first matches as part of the stable, as during a match with the Hurricane on Raw, he would hit the RKO for the first time to win the match, and the RKO would remain as his finisher to this very day. Number 4. Sheamus High Cross. When Sheamus first burst into the scene in WWE, it would take him some time to find the finishing move that he would be using throughout his career. Long before Sheamus would be hitting the bro kick on his opponents, he would be using a finishing move known as the High Cross. The High Cross was a crucifix powerbomb which looked extremely similar to that of Razor Ramon's Razor's Edge. The move was slowly fizzled out of Sheamus's arsenal completely by the time that he won his second WWE title in the summer of 2010. Hence the introduction of the bro kick. Number 3. Seth Rollins Front Falling DDT. In 2015, shortly after Seth Rollins won the WWE title in the main event of WrestleMania 31, Vince McMahon decided to ban his finishing move. The curb stomp was banned because McMahon believed that the move looked dangerous and was going to give the WWE talent a concussion. How McMahon came to this rationale is unknown, as the curb stomp has never injured anyone and was a completely safe move for a wrestler to take, unlike the buckle bomb. But moving forward, Rollins would use a front falling DDT, a move that was a huge downgrade in comparison to the curb stomp. Rollins would soon retire his finisher when he would begin to use Triple H's pedigree to tie into the storyline he was in at the time with the Authority. Number 2. Samoa Joe Muscle Buster. Samoa Joe has been synonymous with the Muscle Buster, as many fans, when they would think of the move, would instantly think of Joe. However, in 2015, he was forced to retire the move in WWE forever. In a dark match in the summer of 2015, Joe would hit a muscle buster on Tyson Kidd, and unfortunately it resulted in Kidd seriously injuring his neck and spine. Following the incident, Kidd would never wrestle again, and WWE quite rightly decided to ban the muscle buster. Moving forward, Joe would use the coquina clutch to finish off his opponents. It's unlikely that the muscle buster will ever be used on WWE programming ever again. And number 1, Brock Lesnar, the Chimera Lock. One of the best things about Brock Lesnar when he returned to WWE in 2012 was that he was able to add MMA-style moves into his arsenal. One of these moves was the Chimera Lock, a move that looked absolutely devastating and one that Lesnar would use as his finishing move. The move itself would even make Triple H tap out in the main event of SummerSlam in 2012. However, the finishing move was quickly fizzled out as one of Brock's finishing moves, and eventually would rarely if ever be used at all. In its place, Lesnar would continue to use the F5, and it was never indicated why Lesnar stopped using the submission move as his finisher. But there you have it, folks. 10 finishes that WWE wrestlers retired. There's probably plenty more, so look out for a part 2 in the near future. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.